house in the city has become so expensive for people. So those are some other things to keep in mind. The other thing that you want to think about is when you're looking at condos is whether you want to buy a pre-construction condo or a resale condo. Now that becomes tricky because when you're looking at pre-construction condos, there was a time, maybe about 10 or so years ago, when you purchased a pre-construction condo, you were paying a price per square foot cheaper than what you were paying for a resale condo. Well, now times have changed. Now when you purchase a pre-construction condo, the price per square foot is actually higher than when you purchase a resale condo. What I like about resale condos is that you can actually see exactly what you're getting. With the pre-construction condo, you are buying a piece of paper. You are hoping that the builder lives up to building the walls exactly where they said they're going to be. Because when you purchase a pre-construction condo, that builder does have the right to make changes to the unit. And the floor plan that you think that you bought could end up changing in the end. Now, the other thing with the pre-construction condo is you're definitely going to be having to put down 20 or 25% of your investment upfront. If you purchase resale, you can put down 5%, 10%, 15%, 20% with the CMHC premium. Or, of course, you can put down 20% as well. But with the pre-construction condo, you've got to put all of that money up front. And then the builder, well, I guess really it's sitting in trust, so the builder's lawyer is going to be holding on to that money for the next 3 to 4 years until that condo is completed. If you purchase the resale condo, you can actually pay that amount of money, and within 30, 60, or 90 days, you've got a place to live. So your money isn't tied up as long if you're in the resale condo versus with the pre-construction condo. The other thing with the pre-construction condo is that there are a lot of development charges that are tacked on after the fact. So it's really important that if you are going to purchase a pre-construction condo is to get a lawyer. Most people don't realize that they need to get a lawyer when they're looking at pre-construction condos because that lawyer will help you whittle down the development charges that you pay. I remember the first condo I bought, it was a long time ago. I think it was 16 or 17 years ago, my first condo. I had remembered to take the documents to my lawyer. My lawyer went and argued for me to reduce the development charges. And I remember when my building closed, everyone in the building was sort of comparing notes. And there was a group of us who all knew to go get lawyers, so our development charges were quite minimal. And then there were some other people, unfortunately, who didn't realize that they needed to get a lawyer. And so their development charges were quite a bit higher. So it really does pay to make sure that you have a lawyer take a look at that agreement. At the end of the day, any agreement that somebody hands you, you need to have a lawyer look at it. It's not just something random. The pre-construction condo agreement that they give you is it's thick. It's a thick document of legalese. And you really need a lawyer to check that information out for you. You simply just can't trust willy-nilly that everything's okay in the contract. The other thing that you should look at when you're purchasing condos is whether you'd like to purchase a co-op condo or just a regular condo. So with a co-op or a co-ownership condo, those buildings, you tend to have to put down 35% down in order to get the mortgage for that particular building. The other thing is that the traditional charter banks won't finance a co-op condo. So you'll have to go to a secondary lender, which tends to mean that your interest rates could be a little bit higher. So for a lot of people, the co-op condo doesn't make sense for them. I think especially if you're a young person, having to put 35% down, it can also limit the resale value of that particular condo under those kinds of constraints. However, there is a segment of the market that really, really loves that co-op condo. And I've noticed it's the retirement segment of the market. There's a great building in Rosedale where it is predominantly retired people who've basically all cashed out of their mansions, their huge house, their $1 million houses in Toronto. And so now they're actually just paying cash for their condo. So they don't care about the 35% down because they're still saving money from selling their house to downsizing to the condo. The condo is relatively cheap enough for them that they're just basically paying cash for the condo. So the financing's not an issue. And because it's like those like-minded people and that same demographic that tends to move into that building, when those units come up for sale, they're snapped up very quickly because other retired people also want to be in that same complex. Partly because there's swimming pools, there's activities, there is a concierge, and if you're retired, you like having all of those different things, and those things are important to you, and paying cash isn't an issue. So you really have to look at your finances and figure out, and your demographic, of course, to figure out what makes sense for you, a regular condo or one that's a co-op where you have to put 35% down. And just as a side note, it's interesting, in New York, the co-ops are all the rage. I mean, Barbara Streisand lives in one, Yoko Ono lives in one. That's a big staple of the New York condo market, is co-ops. But in Toronto, there aren't as many. When they do, the buildings tend to be a little bit smaller. And as I mentioned, they are certainly not as great for resale value, unless it's a certain building with a certain demographic. Also, you want to look at when you're purchasing a condo is, as I mentioned earlier, being close to work. Is it close to the subway? Is it close to coffee shops? Is it close to shops in general? Those things are also very important when you're looking at your condo for yourself, but also for resale. You always have to keep in mind when you're purchasing that condo, you want to make sure that you like it, but you need to make sure that other people after you are also going to like it to make sure that your resale value will be sustained. One of the things I've noticed is that people don't really like bedrooms that don't have windows that lead outside. So a lot of the newer condo buildings seem to have pocket doors for bedrooms, and the bedrooms tend to be on the inside of the condo versus facing the window of the outside of the condo. So I would say that for optimal resale value, it makes sense to purchase a condo where the bedrooms have direct sunlight and direct windows to the exterior of the building, that the bedrooms are not internal bedrooms. Because I do find that that tends to be a deal breaker for a lot of people, which I always find odd, because really when you're sleeping, you don't really need the windows open. The whole thing is actually you want it to be very dark, so it might be helpful to not be close to a window. But that does seem to be what the market wants right now, is they want to be close to a window. So when you're looking at a condo, you really just have to start taking into account what's really important to you. Is it the maintenance fees? If it is the maintenance fees, then certain kinds of buildings are advantageous to you and certain kinds of buildings are not advantageous to you. So you really need to kind of put together your wish list about what's the most important thing. Is it the maintenance fees? Is it the size of the building? Is it the amenities? Is it whether it's a co-op or not a co-op? Do you need a lot of space? Is it okay if it's a smaller space? Is it okay what the finishings look like? I have noticed on a couple of newer buildings, the finishings and the quality haven't been that good. With some of the older buildings, the finishings and the quality are very good. They've stood the test of time. There's a lot more soundproofing between units. So those are the things that you really need to take a look at and decide for yourself what's the most important thing to help you make the right decision. And make sure that it's close to the activities that you like doing. And you're going to be working 5 days a week, most likely 9 to 5. So make sure that getting to work simply and easily is something that's simple to do from whatever condo that it is that you purchase. The other thing you need to do when you look at a condo is look out the window and see what possibly might be getting built around that condo building. You know, there's been certainly lots of people who've been shocked by the fact that a condo building comes up right in front of them on the window, and then all of a sudden they have to sell, but now their view is entirely blocked, which is really a shame. So I think it's always important when you go out to look at a condo, look out at the window and start analyzing what are the possibilities that the buildings in the surrounding area could be turned into condos and might block your view. You know, there was a time before where I would say, oh, apartment buildings are safe, but they're not. So if you look out the window and you see a group of houses, know that at any point those houses could be turned into a condo building. If you see a parking lot, no brainer. Just imagine that that's already a condo building. Even if it's a smaller apartment building, you have to understand that in the next few years, as we run out of land to build in the city, those apartment buildings will become the next target for developers. I've certainly noticed it in New York. I always look to see what's happening in bigger cities than Toronto to figure out what's going to be happening to our city later on. And in New York, what you have are developers who are basically paying out the tenants in certain buildings, and they're giving them whatever it is, $100,000, whatever, to move out, just so that they can demolish that apartment building and build a condo building up instead. So that's something to take into account as well too, is look out the window and see what's below you. You know, the only guarantees you have these days are cemeteries and parks. So if the view is really, really important to you, then make sure you look at buildings that face cemeteries and face parks, because that will be the only guarantee. I think everything else is not a guarantee. So that's always something else to keep in mind as well too. So there's so much to look at when you're buying a condo, but I would say make a list of what your priorities are Is it the maintenance fees? Is it the amenities? Is it the view? Is it the location? Is it the demographics? Is it the percentage of renters in the building? And all of these things will factor into your buying decision for a condo. The other thing is make sure you just get out and see a lot of different condos so that you have an idea of what you like. One of the things you can do is if you start to see condos in a certain building that you like, okay, you know what? The second something comes up for sale in that particular building, you want to see it because you tend to like that building, which is also something good to know as well too. So that's it for today. I really wanted to give you some information about how to buy a condo and the things that you need to know to purchase a condo well for yourself now, for resale later on. And thank you so much for joining me. If you'd like to reach out to me, I can be found on Twitter at davellemorrison, on Instagram at davellemorrison, and my email address is davel@bosleyrealestate.com. Thanks so much for joining me today. Bye.
You've been listening to the Morrison Report. Hosted by Davell Morrison, sales representative for Bosley Real Estate Limited Brokerage, real estate investor and best-selling author, bringing you insights on the Toronto real estate market. Join us for another podcast.